Screw it up. Hey, and I hit the wall. Guys, there's nothing behind us. It's just blank. It's a blank wall. You can't see nothing, bro. And it's white. I mean, yeah, the color white. The color is white. Am I right? Oh, shut up. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We back with another juice.
Now, guys,
Video on it.
Before we even start, we're gonna be reacting to the Game Theorist.
Yeah, of course.
But let's start with this first. The reason I didn't do the intro today is because guys,
wait, if you hear the background, that's our settings.
Yeah, we'll be out of here soon, so don't worry. But for right now, guys, I want you guys to listen to me here. Actually, all right, I got something important. Why am I short? Hold on. Let me sit up some. There we go. Okay, so I have something important to say. Guys, what do you guys want to see? Leave it in the comment section below so I can read and see what you guys want us to post. It could be anything. It could be vlogging, traveling. It could be events. Like, just tell me what you guys want to see so that way we can post it on the channel and you guys can be entertained
and satisfied.
Yeah, and also thank you guys for watching the whole video rather than just stopping at the first part of the intro.
Thanks for doing that. Like, seriously, me and him been looking at it, and wait, what did it say? Like 5 minutes or so?
Yeah, it was like, instead of it being like 30 seconds,
like 30 seconds, a minute, or whatever. I'm like, dang, yo.
It was like more towards the end, like 5-10 minutes now, and I'm like, thank you guys for doing that for us.
Yeah, so
I appreciate that.
So like we said, watch throughout the video, or at least half.
Yeah, watch.
That's all we're asking for. That's all we're asking for. Half or the full thing, because we try to entertain you guys.
But anyways,
we do this for you guys, and we doing this for us. But anyway, go ahead.
If you guys are new to the channel, please be sure to leave a like down below and subscribe to the channel.
Because we come out with straight bangers. Bangers and stay lit on our channel. Let's go.
Okay, well, let's start reacting to this video.
Okay, I'm black, by the way.
Yeah, we can see that.
Space. The Wither, the second boss of Minecraft.
Wait a minute.
A haunting,
How's the
floating
quality?
nightmare that's eluded all
crap.
explanation since its introduction back in 2017. The
Oh
ancient
my God.
builders, a civilization
There we go.
Okay.
lost to history, their works brought to ruin, and their name eroded.
Okay, there we go, guys.
The Warden,
Very good.
the newest threat to this world. A creature of blind rage engulfed in shadow. An unstoppable force fueled by souls and empowered by darkness. 3 groups, 3 distinct mysteries waiting to be solved. And all of them united by this. Hello, Internet! Welcome to
Game Theory.
Show that can't wait to hear you.
Hi,
Click that
Game
subscribe
Theory.
button.
And guys, I know we've been energetic because we've been dealing with some personal stuff. But you know, now we're trying to come back.
So,
Yeah, we're trying
sorry
to
about that. I kind of forgot the Warden
get back
was a
into
thing,
the
but
grind.
can you believe
Yes,
it? The Warden
sir.
was due to come out in the summer
trying
of
to,
2021, but
keep
then
it
the
going.
Deep Dark
Yes,
ended
sir.
up getting removed from the update, which itself got split into 2 parts. Speaking of 2 parts, no, don't worry, this episode isn't a 2-parter, but we do have ourselves a second
But you guys
Minecraft
know we'll
video
keep you
happening
guys up to
today
speed on
over
what's
on
been
Food
going on.
Theory.
Yes,
That's right,
sir.
we got ourselves a Minecraft weekend, y'all. Well, here we're busy dissecting the latest additions from the Wild update. Over on Food Theory, we're talking all about the Dream SMP, which honestly doesn't sound very foodie, but then Dream decided to go and kill Tommy in it using a potato. And you know where there is murder to be had, we'll probably find a way to make a theory out of it. So head on over there for all your potato murder needs after you're done with this video, because first, we gotta finish talking about the Warden. As of this week, it has finally launched as part of the
Dark
Wild
biome.
update. According to Mojang, not only have the mechanics of the Warden been refined, but they've added new blocks to the Deep Dark, new items, and oh yeah, we're also getting one of the coolest, most complex and interesting structures ever created in Minecraft, the Ancient Cities. Based on the name alone, this seems like the thing that we've been theorizing about for years. Oh, victory has never felt so good. But you know what feels even better than being right? Having new lore to chew on. Mojang understands that you don't just drop an entire underground city complete with giant burning portal frame into your game without considering what it's doing there from a story perspective. And similarly, you don't just introduce the single strongest mob to guard it without without factoring in the rationale for placing it there. So our question is why? What does all of this mean for the secret story of Minecraft? How do these disparate parts wind up working together? Well, shockingly, not only is everything here connected, but all of it is also tied to one of the longest standing mysteries in the game,
just
the
like
Wither.
Wi-Fi.
But to decode it all, we actually need one key item. An item that's been broken up and hidden throughout all of these updates. Something innocuous, something unsuspecting, a simple music disc. Everything is unlocked through this one disc. So what is the story of the Deep Dark and how does it tie into the narrative that we've been building over the last 3 years? Strap in, friends, because today we're diving in deep to tap into the darkest lore of Minecraft. First, let's talk about the Skulk. When the Skulk family of blocks was originally announced in 2020, we understood the basics. A Skulk sensor reacts to noise, and when it does, it alerts a fearsome monster known as the Warden to your exact location. 2 hits later, you're dead, son. But now we have more details, and what we've learned is disturbing, to say the least. A new block called the Skulk Catalyst basically takes in energy to transform the blocks around it into other Skulk blocks. That's how this creature is able to spread, but it begs the question, what energy is it using to convert these regular blocks? Well, this ain't your grandma's moss blocks that you can just bone meal around, my friends. These things take something a bit more potent than that. The souls of the living. You see, if a mob dies within 8 blocks of the catalyst, the mob won't drop XP orbs. Instead, souls appear above the catalyst, at which point the Skulk spreads to new blocks. Remind me, where have we seen souls in relation to this update before? Oh yeah, the Warden. In the middle of its chest, we have what look to be the faces of 3 trapped souls. Now, in our last theory, we speculated that Wardens were created using a combination of Skulk and souls in order to protect the underground cities. However, I'm not so sure anymore. Back in 2020, we got this tweet from 1.19 developer Brandon Pierce, which says, quote, "You could definitely argue that the Skulk in general is sentient." Now, we just talked about how when a mob dies near the Skulk Catalyst, it creates new Skulk blocks. But it can also create a new block called the Skulk Shrieker. This block is the key, because not only does it have souls swirling around inside of it, thereby confirming that it's being created from the souls of the dead, but it also makes these sounds. That's fine. I didn't need to see
yeah, that's weird.
Anyway, that shriek isn't just signaling that I have to take an adult diaper change. When it goes off, you'll hear another noise. The sound of something burrowing up to the surface.
Like, what is that?
That something is the Warden.
Is that my ex?
So what am I saying here? Well, I'm suggesting that the Warden wasn't created by the ancient builders to protect themselves. Instead, I think it was made by the Skulk to protect itself. When it senses danger, it summons a creature made of Skulk, an unstoppable force that acts as the final line of defense, trying to ensure the survival of this species. And this is actually supported by the Warden item drop. You see, if you manage to take one down, it drops a single Skulk Catalyst, which honestly feels like a crummy reward for something so difficult. However, from a lore standpoint, it makes perfect sense. If the Warden's primary objective is indeed the survival of the species, then in defeat, it would want to release a last-ditch attempt to keep the species alive, hence a single Catalyst. But that still doesn't answer the major question, where did the Skulk come from in the first place? For that, we actually have to take a closer look at the new biome, the Deep Dark, and more importantly, those ancient cities. Once you enter the Deep Dark biome, you start to find these patches of Skulk blocks. If you follow these patches further down into the cave, eventually you'll find an ancient city, ruins covered in even more Skulk. Logic would dictate that since the concentration of Skulk is higher in the cities, this must be where it originated, and this seems to be correct. In ancient cities, the hallways are covered in woolen carpets. That's an important detail since the Skulk and Wardens are sound-based entities. They respond to your steps. And wouldn't you know, woolen carpet are the only blocks that don't activate the Skulk when they're walked on. This tells us that the inhabitants of the ancient city were clearly aware of the Warden, and they were trying to live their best alongside it. However, just because this seems to be where the Warden lives now doesn't mean that it's always been here. Right in the middle of the ancient cities is a massive structure made out of a new block called Reinforced Deep Slate, an immovable, indestructible block similar to the end portal frames. But that's not where the similarities end. In the game files, this big structure of Reinforced Deep Slate is known as the City Center. It's a pretty generic name, right? Doesn't really tell us all that much. However, there are smaller versions of that same city center dotted around, and in the game files, they're known as small portal statues. Portal, you say? No, sure, Mojang has said for years that it isn't adding any new dimensions, but that's missing the point. I don't think Mojang is introducing a new dimension, I think they're introducing the idea of a new dimension as they continue to explain Minecraft's history. A history that becomes a lot more clear thanks to one little item. Or should I say 9 little items that make up a bigger one? Disc
like story
number
mode or
5.
something?
That's right, ladies and gentlemen, we've got ourselves a new numbered disc. And you
Is
know
this
what
like
that
story mode or
means?
something?
Sound-based
No, this is-
storytelling. But
Well-
before I can start piecing together the disc
Yeah,
and the
I think
lore,
that's
I've got to tell you about how you can start piecing together a
place
great
technology
website, because this portion of today's episode is sponsored by Squarespace. Squarespace is
Okay, yeah.
minus.
I mean, that's cool, but
Squarespace, the website using drill by now. Just
Yeah.
click the link in the
Okay,
top.
yeah. Go check it out and
Your
then make sure you
first ring
subscribe.
skips fragments
us
which can
too.
be found in chests
Alright,
throughout
yeah.
the ancient city.
Oh,
But
this
instead of
fragment.
delightful music, this one follows in the footsteps of discs 11 and 13, a sound effect driven track that's designed to tell us a story in order to fill out the lore of what's going on here. The track starts off with the classic sound of static, like you'd expect from an old record player, but it begins to ramp up into a loud rumble, which is then immediately cut off, followed by what appears to be the speed up of time. We'll hear these sorts of speed ramp effects a lot throughout the disc. The next set of sounds are ones that are familiar to anyone who knows discs 11 and 13. The sound of someone walking underground, this time on dripstone. You can tell based on the footsteps,
Dripstone,
using their
okay.
flint and steel to light a fire while bats flutter through the cave. However, as this character walks, it eventually turns into a march, which is then joined by other footsteps coming from what seems like heavily armored soldiers. We can make out sirens going off in the background.
That sounds terrifying.
It all comes to an abrupt halt when something that sounds like a lever gets pulled. Now, I looked through a lot
Yeah,
of
that sounds
Minecraft
terrifying.
sounds, but there are a number of sounds in this track that I couldn't find exact matches for. It sounds like they've added extra sound effects to help build out the story. Like in this case, the sound of a lever is more like a switch being flicked, but in the track it feels much bigger, like a lever that's attached to a large mechanism. Cause following that sound, we hear some creaking and the sound of wind rushing in, like a huge door that's being opened. After this, we hear our character take a deep breath, only to then hear a monster shriek. So far, it feels relatively self-explanatory. The first person we hear walking is someone leading a charge or a group of soldiers, lighting a torch to help them walk underground. In the distance, we hear the warning sirens of a city blaring. They open the door in order to defend the city against something when suddenly, the disc has a weird break. We hear 23 seconds of just music. It's almost like different discs have been smashed together. It was in fragments, after all. That would also probably explain all the time warping effects we hear throughout the track. Different chunks of the disc were recorded at different RPMs, which is why the audio is constantly warping and shifting. Anyway, when the music ends, we're back to the story. Bubbling lava can be heard, while more footsteps on dripstone move towards an amethyst. They break the block, and doing so seems to set off some sort of a cave-in. It's not really a sound I recognize, and the closest I could find were mood sounds from the nether wastelands, which would explain the lava, but not really the dripstone floor of the amethyst. After the cave-in, we hear screeches off in the distance. Screeches of what appear to be phantoms. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense underground.
Phantom
However,
screech.
very shortly afterwards, we hear our character run quickly, and the terrain changes
Or
from
shriek,
dripstone
whatever.
to
Well, I call
stone
it
to
screech,
dirt.
I don't care.
Meaning that he's running relatively close to the surface. We hear the clanging of tools as they collect materials, coughing as they light fires to see,
Corona.
but
Why
he
you coughing
clearly
like
sees
that?
something that causes him to run away quickly, only to then reveal another monster roar, which is again quickly distorted by the change of scene from the disc. Thuds are now heard in the background, explosions distorted by the cave system. Our character places down
Distance
sand,
explosion.
scrapes a metal tool against a stony object, and finally a mechanical noise is heard, all while eerie voices whisper in the background, similar to that of the Soul Sand valleys, but the explosions are getting more frequent, until eventually one bursts into the area. There's a brief moment of silence before suddenly the reverse sound of glass is heard, and we hear the souls shriek in a huge gust, leaving nothing but a warping hum in the background, all of which sounds very similar to the creation of a portal.
Scary.
In that moment, our character takes a few steps towards the portal. We know this because the sound gets louder, until he places down dirt blocks to help him reach it, where we are then met with the sound of a skulk sensor and the roar of a warden. The tape actually winds down here, but there's actually one more sound mixed in with the warden roar. Listen carefully. Did you catch it? The warden roars,
No.
and it's closely followed by a slowed down death sound from one very specific mob, the Wither.
Oh. I don't
play Minecraft
So
like that, okay? I'm
that's the
sorry.
breakdown of the disc from what
I'll
I
play it,
hear,
but not like
thinking
that.
about the story fragments that we have, the question is, what does it mean? Well, let's actually talk about that last bit. A member of an ancient builder society, the same one that made these underground cities, is out caving, collecting precious materials, when all of a sudden he hears something out in the distance. He rushes to the surface, only to see the Wither floating there. This leads to the first section of the disc with the emergency sirens blaring. The Wither is on its way, so the city needs to mobilize its army to try and take it down. They travel through the caves until they get to a secure entrance. When they open the gates, it's clear that their worst fears have come true. The Wither has followed the colonists down into the depths. They can hear the Wither's explosions in the distance, getting closer and more frequent. Desperate for an escape, they rush to finish the new portal technology they've been working on. They've clearly built portals before, specifically to the Nether, where they've learned about the properties of soul sand. We know this because of the lanterns that are all around the ancient city. They begin to make the final touches to their portal. They make it out of a block that is so impenetrable not even the Wither can destroy it. This is gonna be their ticket out. They place soul sand underneath this new portal and they light it, which is exactly what we see left over in the ancient cities. There are also still remnants of their experiments underneath the portal. Redstone circuits, experimenting with powering blocks, how much power you can output with different objects, redirecting power. Ultimately, soul sand seems to be the most powerful source of energy. Combining all of these things together allows them to open the portal. The souls from the soul sand screaming as they're used to power it. At that moment, the Wither breaks through. The builder makes his way to the portal to escape, but it's not what they expect. From the portal comes the Warden, who destroys the Wither, but also brings the Skulk into this world. And so that is the story of Disc 5, the origins of the Warden. It's not an experiment gone wrong, it's a desperate escape attempt to the wrong place, which brings with it a new and deadly invasive species, the Skulk. But the thing is, Disc 5 isn't the end of our story, because how did the ancient builders go from here all the way to the end? Well, it may be slightly more speculative, but hear me out. The Warden comes through the portal and kills the Wither. This wasn't the ancient builders' intent, but hey, worked out for them regardless. And so they worship the Warden as some kind of god. This is why there are candles all around the portal, along with the portal being shaped to look like the Warden. However, this blissful ignorance doesn't last forever. The ancient builders carry on with their lives, but doing so activates the new Skulk that's around, which eventually re-summons the Warden. The Warden then goes on to kill many ancient builders, spreading the Skulk further. Those that do manage to survive try what they can to remain in the city that they've built. They put down carpets and wool to make sure that they don't make sounds while walking around, but it's not enough. Even opening their chests sets the Skulk off, so they're forced to leave the city. The few that remain decide, rather than building vast cities, to instead build one fortified fortress, the Stronghold, built with confusing hallways and winding staircases in order to give them the ability to outrun the Warden should the Skulk make its way to them. In these strongholds, they create the end portals and use them to escape from this unforgiving world, only to then get stuck on the other side. So there you have it, the origin of one of Minecraft's newest and most dangerous mobs. The Warden isn't a failed experiment, but rather an invasive species that came from another world. And while many are begging for a new dimension to be added to the game, Disc 5 serves as a warning of what happens when you open portals to mysterious new lands. If the Warden is what popped out last time, I fear what lies in wait should we open it again. But hey, that's just a theory. A game theory. Thanks for watching.
That's actually crazy, bro.
I had no idea what you just said.
Wow, that was a lot of information to take in for a kid's game.
I know. I have no idea what he said. I wasn't keeping up. I wasn't following.
Like, bro, you literally cannot talk. You have to listen.
You have to listen, bro. Whatever he says, you gotta pay attention. Basically, just pay attention.
If you guys are new to the channel, please be sure to leave a like down below and subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out.
Peace out.